My name is Quantre Sutter.
My name is Isabella Filipponi.
My name is Dana Nguyen.
And I am a nursing major.
I am a criminal justice major.
And I am a biology major. Hello everyone, an important note and hopefully a reminder, our group looked at bullying and domestic violence from a greater perspective in terms of considering bullying and domestic violence to be very similar in the definition that both cause repeated negative actions towards others. So let's begin. Let's take a look at the history here. This screenshot is taken from a page from Child Abuse in Hawaii on a website dedicated to what abuse is and its history on the islands. Let's highlight some crucial dates here. First, in 1655 was the earliest recorded case in colonial Massachusetts. Although there are no records showing earlier dates, it does not rule out the possibility that domestic violence was not happening. Next, in 1899, the world's first juvenile court was founded in Cook County, Chicago. Now, you may be confused as to what Chicago has to do with Hawaii, but let me explain. With the founding of the first juvenile court came the founding of Child and Family Services of Hawaii, which helped initially found the court in Chicago. This started as a charity organization, but then would later turn into the Social Services Bureau. Now onto the meso level. Let's talk about our actual group findings. Right off the bat, our group found that based on most of our articles, our majors connected closely to one another when it came to the social, economic, and environmental aspects of our social issue. Starting from a social aspect, all majors, including criminal justice, biology, and nursing, were found to correlate with one another. For example, it was very common that the nursing and biology majors had similar findings as they can go very hand in hand. Specifically, nurses, doctors, physicians, etc. are all expected to understand that when it comes to working with teens who are experiencing drug abuse, it is important to see that the root of this problem most likely stemmed from bullying and/or domestic violence. Now, in terms of criminal justice, it forced all majors to take a deeper look at how teens who did go through drug and/or substance abuse due to bullying and domestic violence, that many of these teens resulted in depression, anxiety, and several mental health issues according to the NSDUH. Next, taking a look from an economic aspect. All majors were very similar again in their findings, as a majority took a look at the economy of the workers, facilities, and individuals themselves. Specifically, nursing and biology focused on how the funds for proper treatment, facilities, and labor workers were very high. This issue puts a major dent in the idea of how unsustainable it is due to how much work, time, money, and resources need to be put in to help these teens who have been affected. Similar to the criminal justice major, there's an issue of costs to fund victims, judges, prosecutors, etc. Overall, the economy is affected in terms of money and resources, which has been found to be unsustainable. From an environmental aspect, we can look at factors including poverty, high unemployment, inadequate housing, and high crime. From a nursing and biology perspective, domestic violence and drug use are both detrimental to the development of teens, and physical abuse may result in the teen being sent to the emergency room. Once that teen comes to the hospital with a suspicion of DV, healthcare professionals become essential to critically evaluating the situation and determining how the teen can be helped. Contacting numerous agencies as well as the local police department is a role for those healthcare providers, as well as considering the possible consequences of handing that teen back over to the abuser. Many victims of DV suffer from mental disorders following the abuse, including anxiety, depression, PTSD, and substance abuse. Next up is our bill HB 1199. On January 25th of 2023, House Bill 1199 was introduced into the Hawaii House of Representatives. This bill would give police officers due process if they are accused of committing an act of domestic violence, and also adds stricter background checks upon the actual hiring. Moving on to a greater meso level, when it came to the community feedback, we had our peers, staff, friends, and family here on the island take a survey of 7 questions shown as the following. As we gathered information from our server, we came to the conclusion that, based on the results, our local community tells us and agrees with us that domestic violence and bullying is an ongoing social issue and relates to the increase of drug abuse. Over 80% of respondents agree that domestic violence correlates with increased drug abuse among teens. Now for the game plan. We picked 2 agencies known as Family Promise of Hawaii and HCAP to help with our plan because they worked with housing families with teens who struggled with some sort of DV, bullying, and drug abuse. Our actual plan was to go to Aloha Tower Marketplace and set up a table with the agency's brochures and business cards to educate those on campus about our social issue and what they could do to help. We would have our community take a pre-assessment and then listen to us educate them about our social issue and the agencies, and take a post-assessment. The idea behind this is to see how sustainable our plan actually was in order to see how effective and knowledgeable we were in spreading the information. Now with our action plan, we take a look at the 5 approaches, which include SDGs, IPE, systems theory, micro, meso, macro, and ecological perspective. First, when looking at SDGs, we take a look at 4. First being no poverty. Poverty plays a big role in domestic violence as financial struggles can cause people to become desperate for solutions. By addressing poverty through outreach, a reduction in domestic violence follows. Next, we look at SDG number 3, which is good health and well-being. By reducing domestic violence, we reduce drug use throughout the island, which promotes a physically and mentally healthy lifestyle. Thirdly, we have SDG number 4, which is quality education. Partners with less education are more likely to engage in domestic violence than those with higher education levels. Providing more access to education would decrease both domestic violence and poverty. Lastly, we have SDG number 10, reduce inequalities. Women who accept patriarchal norms are more likely to be abused. By addressing gender inequality and discrimination, we can combat this. Next up, we have IPE, also known as interprofessional education. This is considered the collaborative work and educational approach between people of different professions that learn with, about, and from one another, said by Tran of 2023. The idea behind our plan is to go to Aloha Tower and educate those about our issue and properly understand if our plan is sustainable. Since this deals with us being college students, speaking to other college students, and possibly faculty, it falls right within IPE. Thirdly, we have the systems theory, said by Ashman and Hull of 2017. It speaks about the systems theory as being a focus in social work in which behavior can be seen as a system. More specifically, the systems theory is the idea that behavior is influenced by many factors such as family, friends, work, class, etc. There's a long list of external factors that could affect the behavior, but the most important thing is that they are all somehow connected and have a relationship. It looks at how all the factors come together as a whole system. Our plan is to go to Aloha Tower and set up a table in which we'll educate people about our social issue and test their knowledge prior to and after listening to us speak. The idea behind this will be that the only way our plan can actually become sustainable is if we get the community involved. Fourthly, we have the micro, meso, macro approach. The micro, meso, macro approaches are levels of practice that are often used in social work but can be found in our daily lives. At the macro level, this focuses on the individual. At the meso level, this will be more about groups and or families, and at the macro level, this focuses on entire systems, such as organizations and communities. With that knowledge, our group incorporates all levels when it comes to our plan of action. From a micro level, each individual person in the group had to do their own digging into the issue and base it on their major. Since each person will have specific knowledge within their major in the topic, this allows us to come together to really educate the public about this issue and have our facts straight so that we're a reliable source of information. Finally, from a macro perspective, we have all come together to work with 2 agencies in the community to offer us physical brochures and business cards in order to bring more information to the community and work with one another. Lastly is the ecological perspective. Although the ecological perspective and system theory are very similar, the ecological perspective takes a look at the living dynamic interactions, said by Ashman and Hull of 2017. Simply, the ecological perspective looks more directly at the individual and the active people and environment, while the systems theory is a more broad view of systems among systems, also known as subsystems. The systems theory would differ from the ecological perspective in the sense that it does not look at how the factors come together to work as a system, but instead focuses on the factors themselves. Now check us out in action. Conclusion, based on our pre- and post-assessments, it is clear that the pre-assessments show more variation in incorrect answers, whereas the post-assessment showed a great improvement in providing the proper answers. We were able to speak with about 31 members of the community and better educate them on this issue and how they can help. The improvement in score in just about an hour and a half shows that this simple plan would be a great sustainable way in solving this social issue. As a final reminder, Honolulu Community Action Program, also known as HCAP, and Family Promise are both great programs in dealing with our social issue, considering they are both non-profit organizations that have been around since about 1965 here on Oahu. Both agencies run very similar programs for their after-school teens. Some of their many programs and services include Head Start and Early Head Start, the Limahana Employment Corps Services Program, Creative STEM After-School Program, and many more. Their missions are to alleviate poverty and empower low-income families and families who have had teens who've experienced DV, bullying, and or drug abuse. Specifically looking at one of the programs known as High Initiative Creative STEM After-School Program is a great example of how their mission uses the SEES approach, as mentioned earlier, and has been a big theme in this course. This program is a fun, safe, and sustainable way in which those who are in grades 2 through 8 spend their after school doing specific activities that allow them to learn by exploring the different topics of science, technology, engineering, and math, also known as STEM. So to end on a strong note, we would like to give out a huge thanks to both Family Promise and HCAP in our community for teaming up with us to help and spread more information about our social issue of how bullying and domestic violence cause an increase in teen drug abuse here in Hawaii.